afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. It is Saturday, November 9th, and you know what that means. It is time for the High Risk Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, acknowledging our one true tribal chief. It is I, Jeremy Pierce. Welcome one and all. Check out the socials, Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube, Charismatic_Creations52 on Instagram, and of course the 215 on Twitter. And today's show, we're just going to look at the greatness of the NXT Women's Division, past, present, and the future, talk about it, enjoy it, and really break some of it down to see where we are heading. But for now, you know what's next, so just go on and hit my music. If we're going to talk about the NXT Women's Division, then we have to talk about the 5 greatest women all time of NXT. And this will include NXT UK because, well, they have the NXT banner. And we start with, of course, number 5, a woman who, well, was a big part of NXT UK. And that would be none other than Kaylee Ray. And you now know her as Alba Fire on the main roster. But she was dominant in NXT UK. She made her first appearance in the Mae Young Classic and then went over to NXT UK, where she was just top of the top. She was the one time, right, the NXT UK Women's Champion. And you want to know about that championship? She held that belt for 649 days. She is the longest reigning women's champion of the modern era, not named Athena. Let that sink in. She is the longest reigning women's champion of the modern era, not named Athena. And this was only one reign. That's how good she was. And still is. Don't let the way she's being treated on the main roster for you. She is still that good. Number 4, Roxanne Perez, our current NXT Women's Champion, who is in her second reign. She's called the Prodigy, and she's called the Prodigy for a reason. She's only 23, and ladies and gentlemen, she is that good. She has earned that name. She has rightfully earned that name. She has been trained by some of the best, and she now is just carrying NXT. She is the face of that women's division, and what else is there to say? You can see in the ring that she is just good. She has 2 reigns, and currently they are sitting at 326 days, and she is soon to pass Charlotte Flair, and there's a strong chance she can reach the top 3. Roxanne is just good, y'all, and you see why they back her. She's really got this heel thing going, even though I think she's probably much better as a face, but I digress. Roxanne Perez is the future of this business. Now, how about number 3, the Empress of Tomorrow? Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Asuka was dominant. There was no other woman more dominant in the history of NXT than Asuka. Shayna Baszler came close, but Asuka had one reign as the NXT Women's Champion. That reign lasted 522 days. Not only that, she went undefeated for her entire NXT career, for about the first 2 years of her main roster career, before unceremoniously losing to Charlotte Flair. And Asuka has done everything in this business. She's done everything except for get a win at WrestleMania, and that's going to come soon. Do not disrespect the Empress of Tomorrow. And then we have number 2, and if you know who number 2 is, then you know who number 1 is. Number 2 is none other than the hugger herself, Bayley. Bayley is so well respected in this business that you've never heard a bad thing about her. She's on that same level of Bryan Danielson in terms of respect when it comes to this business. And her and a certain someone else in NXT carried that division. They showed what women's wrestling can truly be. There was no greater women's babyface in NXT than Bayley, and there still hasn't been one. The hugger gimmick got everyone involved, and it made Bayley into a star. And of course, if Bayley is number 2, then we know who number 1 is. None other than the boss herself, Sasha Banks. Yeah. If you put a gun to my head, I will tell you right here, right now, that Sasha Banks is the greatest competitor, star in the history of NXT. No other person, with the exception of Bayley, and probably Asuka, comes close. Male or female, comes close to what Sasha Banks achieved in NXT. She and Bayley showed a women's wrestling is, what it can be, and what it should be. Main eventing pay-per-views and getting everyone over, getting everyone involved. There was no greater heel, there was no greater person in NXT than Sasha Banks. She is considered one of the best of the best of the best of the best. And in her NXT career, she won Match of the Year, she won Woman of the Year, because she was just that good. We'll be right back. The spotlight is back. It's bright and it's shining on none other than the newest superstar to join NXT, Giulia. This lady has really made a name for herself on the professional wrestling scene, starting in Ice Ribbon, moving to the independent circuit, and then ultimately Stardom and New Japan, where she just dominated. She made a name for herself as part of the let me get this right, the Donna Del Mondo faction, and becoming Ring of Stardom champion, becoming champion just all across Japan, and having this reputation of being a hard-hitting but technically sound wrestler. And I know I'm a little jealous because I wanted her to go to AEW, but she's doing fantastic in NXT. She has been presented as a major star. She's already been moved to the top of the card, mixing it up with Roxanne Perez, mixing it up with Cora Jade, and the likes of Stephanie Vaquer and Fatal Influence. The WWE knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing when it comes to Giulia, as she is just good. Like, her wrestling style is so unique that you really can't copy it. But when you watch it, you're like, wow, I'm seeing something great. And I am inevitably waiting for that match between her and Roxanne Perez, two of the best. The spotlight is on Giulia, and it's going to be there for a long time. We'll be right back. Now, I won't be before you very long, so just give me 15 good preacher minutes. And what we have for you today, ladies and gentlemen, well, the greatness of the NXT women's division. And here's the thing. As much as the men are celebrated, and rightfully so, let's be honest, the women have honestly always been at the forefront of NXT. You feel me? Going from the game show and the development, getting past the Bill DeMott controversy to essentially becoming what it is now. They have always been honestly at the forefront of the division. And we obviously will start with the beginning, the early days of the division. And it starts with two women, Saraya and Emma. Now, if you go back and look at the early NXT roster, these two women were different, right? So in that early year of the NXT women's division, here's who we had, right? We had Audrey Marie, never really shook out, you know what I mean? We had a couple other names. We had Charlotte, we had Emma, we had Caitlyn, we had Maxine, Paige, Raquel Diaz, who you all know as Shaw Guerrero, Sasha, Sophia Cortez, who you all know as Ivelisse, and Summer Rae. But at the forefront was Paige and Emma, and Paige came from a wrestling family. She is wrestling royalty, and her and Emma showed exactly what could possibly happen when you just give divas a chance. But we'll talk on that just right after this. But they were able to show that women can be more than just bra and panty matches and mud matches and 5-minute matches, or entrances or where the entrance is longer than the actual match. Paige and Emma were the start. They were at the forefront of the quote-unquote Divas Revolution. But then we tossed in a few others, and then we got Give Divas a Chance. And what Give Divas a Chance was, it was a movement. We were, the fans, tired of seeing the women, get played. They were on TV, and the matches just weren't there. The moves weren't there. But after, I think it was a match involving the Bellas, fans revolted on Twitter. And while that's going on the main roster with Give Divas a Chance, we got what's going down in NXT with Paige and Emma, and then Natalya, who you could not have any better veteran to be there to help those women. So with that mixture, we saw what was coming. We saw the greatness, right? And after Paige moved up to the main roster and was great there along with AJ Lee, we got the 4 horsewomen: Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Bayley. And with Charlotte, she had the pedigree coming from a wrestling family. She is, after all, Ric Flair's daughter. And we saw something there. She had to figure things out, but she grew and became Charlotte Flair. Becky Lynch was probably the outlier, where she kind of played second fiddle to the other 3 women. She truly had to find herself while Charlotte was winning championships and getting better and better in the ring. Becky was doing jigs and dancing, and it just didn't click. And the Becky Lynch we know and love now is not the Becky Lynch that we saw and started with in NXT. But ultimately, the 4 horsewomen came down to 2 women that carried NXT, that carried women's wrestling outside of TNA. Don't get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen. Do not get it twisted. The WWE wants to claim progress for women's wrestling. It all started in TNA. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. But Sasha Banks and Bayley were it. The boss and the hugger. You could not find 2 greater rivals in wrestling at that time. These 2 women elevated the game. I will tell you this right here, right now. There is no bigger match in the past 15 years in the WWE than Sasha and Bayley at TakeOver Brooklyn. Better yet, both of their matches. That double dose of excellence is what ultimately elevated the NXT Women's Division and saw that, oh my God, we have to step up. You know what I mean? because it was time. And while that was going on, while Sasha and Bayley were doing their thing, there were other groupings of women joining in, from Aaliyah to Alexa Bliss to Bianca Belair, the Iconics, and Carmella and Dana and Ember Moon, and so many others, Liv Morgan, Nikki Cross, Nia Jax. It was coming. It was coming, and it can all be traced back to Sasha Banks and Bayley elevating that division. The Four Horsemen are so important to the history of women's wrestling, and especially WWE, that it's a shame that we might never get the Fatal 4-Way match. Just let that sink in. We might not get the Fatal 4-Way match. We've had combinations and tag team matches. We've had triple threats. We've had one-on-ones. But the Fatal 4-Way for the championship on the line, we came close at one WrestleMania. It was Charlotte, Sasha, and Bayley. And the fourth woman was Nia Jax. We came close. But after the Four Horsewomen, we transitioned to the Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka. Asuka is in a league and a class of her own. Going from her early years in Japan to WWE, going to NXT, where she was presented as just an unstoppable force. Asuka is one of the greatest of all time. As soon as she made it to NXT, she was presented as someone who just is it. Taking on the different woman, taking on Emma, where at TakeOver London they had a fantastic match. Again, the women were growing and getting better. She won the NXT Women's Championship and then went on an unprecedented run as the NXT Women's Champion, being undefeated, dominating that brand. And her undefeated streak lasted 914 days, eventually losing to Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34. And NXT, you could not get past Asuka. And what was the saying? No one is ready for Asuka, because no one was ready for Asuka. Everyone tried, and no one could beat her. And get this, ladies and gentlemen, she never lost the NXT Women's Championship. Never lost it. She got called to the main roster and had to relinquish it. That's what happened. And meanwhile, while all of this is going down in America, something special is going down in the United Kingdom. NXT UK. Right here, we were seeing something different. We were seeing a special brand of professional wrestling. And it was good. It was different. We had Kaylee Ray, who became the most dominant and longest reigning NXT UK Women's Champion. She was second to none. We had Toni Storm. Not the Toni Storm that was on SmackDown getting pies thrown in her face, but a great champion who was super over with that rock star persona. We had Piper the Viper Nevin. Mind you, all these women were in the Mae Young Classic. We had Piper Nevin, who showed that you could be big, beautiful, and a goddamn bad ass. And of course, Rhea Ripley. And this wasn't the cheerleader Rhea Ripley. No. We were getting something special. We were getting the Rhea that we kind of know now. And I'd be remiss to not mention the legend Mako Satomura, the final boss, not The Rock. That was her name, the final boss, because she's a legend in this business. You just could not beat her. So all of this is going down with the NXT UK women putting on great shows, putting on great matches, and slowly migrating their way over to NXT America. And then we have the changing of the guard with Athena gone on the main roster, with Asuka and the Four Horsemen on the main roster. Who was there to carry the load? Well, there were 2 women and then a third, but the initial 2 were Shayna Baszler and Kairi Sane. Facing each other off in the Mae Young Classic, with Kairi Sane getting the better of Shayna Baszler. These 2 were great rivals because NXT needed something for the women, and Shayna and Kairi carried that load. Shayna working the indies, coming from MMA, and then Kairi coming from Japan. I want y'all to know this, and remember me here. Kairi is one of the best wrestlers on the planet. If you ask me who are right now, between the women on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, who are the 5 best women's wrestlers, in no order: Bayley, Asuka, Kairi, Io, Giulia. Tell me when I'm telling lies. Kairi's that good. Shayna was dominant. She picked up that bar left by Asuka for a dominant champion. We got that with Shayna. And these 2 went blow for blow, back to back, culminating in a fantastic match at where? WWE Evolution, the first ever all-women's pay-per-view, and we haven't had one since. If we look at WWE Evolution, this one-of-a-kind pay-per-view for the women, because TNA, ladies and gentlemen, were doing this already. Look at that card. Rhea versus Dakota, pre-show match, NXT UK Women's Championship. We opened up with Trish and Lita taking on Mickie James and Alicia Fox. It was supposed to be Mickie and Alexa because Alexa was hurt. We had Nia Jax winning a women's battle royal, lastly eliminating Ember Moon. We had Toni Storm defeating Io Shirai to win the Mae Young Classic. And mind you, I didn't even get the Io. We'll get the Io. We had Sasha, Bayley, and Natalya defeating the Riot Squad. We had Shayna defeating Kairi Sane by technical submission to win the NXT Women's Championship. We had Becky Lynch defeating Charlotte Flair in the last women's standing match. And we had Ronda Rousey defeating Nikki Bella. It's a good card. I would have flipped some things around, but that's okay. We had that all women's pay-per-view. And then we had one more person in the changing of the guard, and that would be none other than the genius of the sky, Io Shirai, coming in and showing that, once again, she's just the best at what she does. And we were in the dark days of NXT right when Io came, getting through Kairi and Shayna, the horrible championship reign of Charlotte Flair. Io picked up the ball, ran with it, and ultimately losing the belts. And then we had Rhea carry that brand. And then we had, in my opinion, the 2 worst NXT women's champions of all time, Raquel Rodriguez and Mandy Rose. And I don't really fault Raquel because they needed a giant monster heel, and they used her. They used Rhea Ripley to help get Raquel over. It just didn't work out. But the Mandy Rose reign of terror when we switched to NXT 2.0 was absolutely disgusting. An average wrestler, yes, she's a beautiful woman and she's solid in the ring, but there's no way she should have been defeating Kaylee Ray and Alba Fire and Mako and Roxanne and so many other women that are just better than her. The reign of terror of Mandy Rose rivals that of Triple H. It was just bad. But thankfully, she was gone, and we moved over to the future of NXT. And right here, right now, their women's roster is fantastic. Yes, they're still green. Yes, they're still growing, but they find a way to get all of the women on TV. From Cora Jade going from her punk skateboarder to this indomitable goth badass who shows that, yeah, I'm here to stay. to, hey, Miss Parker, Jada Parker, who just exudes charisma, who just exudes finesse, who's a low-key powerhouse. Jada Parker, honestly, she could be the true future of this brand because she's just got it. And of course, I'd be remiss not to mention Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson. They have finally found what works for them in Metaphor. Lash is another powerhouse. Jakara is another low-key finesse powerhouse. These two are going to be good. They're still got some things to work out, but they're figuring it out. You can see the growth. Then we have our newest signing, one of our newest signings, Stephanie Vaquer. Yes, again, I'm jealous. I wish she would have went to AEW, but she's already represented as this. You heard me say badass a lot. She is a badass. She hits hard. She strikes hard. She's just awesome. Zarya, who just joined, who's represented as this indomitable force. How indomitable? Her finisher is the F5, and the only other woman that uses the F5 in professional wrestling is Rosemary. Let that sink in. Kalani Jordan, they had so much faith in her, they made her the inaugural North American Women's Champion. And she's a high flyer. Along with her and Soroka and Carmen Petrovic. Yeah. The sex appeal and fatal influence. We have one of the best wrestlers on the planet in Giulia, who's just been presented as a top star. And lastly, in my opinion, the future of all of WWE, of all of the women's division, over Cora, over Jada, over Lash, over Jakara, over Stephanie and Zarya, Kalani, Fatal Influence, and Giulia, Roxanne Perez, the Prodigy. Roxanne, I can't rave enough about this woman. Honestly, she does not need to be in NXT anymore. She just doesn't. She is too good, and I know why she's down there. Because if you look at a lot of the NXT women's roster, they are still partially green, but it helped bringing in Giulia and Stephanie Vaquer and Zarya. It helps to have them there. Roxanne's just too good to be in NXT at this point, but she's the future, and she's going to do what she's got to do. NXT's women's division has always been at the forefront of professional wrestling when it comes to the WWE. And they're finally learning that give the people what they want. If you present everybody in a great light, then you get great things, and great things will happen. I'm excited. I am excited to see what comes next because, ladies and gentlemen, what went down on NXT this past week at the ECW Arena was absolutely fantastic. But that is our show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Coming up, look on the screen. Got a couple shows, couple lists, couple things going down. Check out the socials. Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube. Charismatic_Creations52 on Instagram. The 215 on Twitter, Patreon, all that good jazz. And of course, Anna J, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, Gigi Dolan, Isla Dawn, and Bailey. Holla at your boy. Peace.